Well, hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about how to use SPM, StereoPhoto Maker, to generate depth maps. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically follow what I wrote in this guide here on my website. So I'll put a link in the description. But basically this video is just following what I explained in this blog post. So the first thing you're going to do, assuming that you have already downloaded StereoPhoto Maker and you have it running on your computer, is going to be to download the archives where DMAG5 and DMAG9B are. So for that you need to go to here, the 3D software page. And here you need to download the archive containing DMAG5. So it's gonna be, so this is, and you want to get the one with no GUI. So you want that one. You go soft 3D-5-no GUI-x64.rar. So download that one. I already downloaded it, so I don't need to do that. So that's for DMAG5, so that's that. And then for DMAG9B, you need to download that one. You go soft 3D-9-x64.rar. So I already did all that, and everything is already here. So here you can see the two archives. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to so here I'm in downloads directory, and I'm going to put all the stuff that SPM needs in that directory. But you can put it anywhere except on you don't want to put it in there, in those guys. You want to put it somewhere where you don't need administrator privileges to access, because SPM needs to write files. So if you put it there, it's not going to work. So you need to put it anywhere but those two directories. So here I put it into downloads because it's just easier. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it DMAG5_9. And I'm going to put and I'm going to extract everything into here. So let's extract that one. So extract 2. So I'm going to extract to DMAG5_9. Okay, same thing for the other one. So extract to DMAG5_9. I mean, the name you choose for the directory is whatever you want. Yeah, so if it's complaining about things already existing, it doesn't matter. Just say no, yes to all, or no to all. Doesn't matter. So here I'm gonna say yes to all. Okay. Okay. So now that's how it should look like. Okay, so now I'm inside StereoPhoto Maker, and I just loaded a MPO file coming from Fuji W3. So the first thing you want to do is to change something regarding alignment. So you go into Edit, Preferences, Adjustment tab. And here I already changed it, but by default this is not checked, the better precision slow. So you really want to check that one. Better precision, make sure it's checked. Okay. So at this point, okay, so this is the image size, 3334 times 2016. What I want to do is to reduce that size, so I'm gonna change the size. So resize. So I'm gonna resize to 2048. Just keep everything else the same. So I'm resizing, just so that it's more manageable for the algorithms that compute the depth map. And then you absolutely want to adjust the alignment. So adjust, and you just do auto alignment. That's totally fine. And then I'm just going to save the left and right images. Okay, so that's good. And so save left, right images. The type, I always use PNG so that I don't lose any information. So PNG is lossless, so that's what you want to use. And yeah, left and right. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. So and it's going to save right there. This is where I put the MPO file, so that is where I'm going to put the left and right images. So let's save here. Okay, so now we are ready to generate the depth map. So you go into Edit, Depth Map, create depth map from StereoPhoto. You click that. Here we just want to select the DMAC folder so that SPM knows where it is. So you say yes, and you put here wherever you downloaded the DMAC 5 and DMAC 9B. So it's going to be on the downloads. And it's going to be this one, DMAC, that's the one we created, but it's whatever you decided to name your directory. So here in this video I named the folder DMAC 5 __9. So that's the one. So okay. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is to get the background value, which I call the minimum disparity, and then you're going to need to get the foreground value, which is the maximum disparity. So for that you need to pick, for the background value you need to pick a point that's the most in the back of your stereo pair, and you make the red and the blue images coincide, and that's going to be our background value. So here I'm gonna pick something in the background. In my case, so in this case I'm just going to pick maybe this spot here on the brick. So so you click on this window, and then you use the arrow keys to make the two views slide. Again, I want this one and that one to coincide, so I just here, so now they coincide, and I click on get background value, so I get my -168. Then you do the same thing for the foreground. So I'm gonna pick something in the foreground. So now it's a matter of figuring out what's most in the foreground. So I'm not completely sure. Maybe that pot here, I don't know, or that one. So let's slide things. Let's slide the two views. Yeah, so that's about right. That's about right. So now I'm going to click on get foreground value, and I get a value of 12. If you're not completely sure, you can always click here and change it. Instead of 12, put I don't know, 16. Instead of minus 168, you change it to minus 172. Doesn't really matter. So the minimum and the so here you have the minimum and max disparities. Minus 168 to 12. Let's get the values automatically and see if they are close to what's there. So get values automatic. Let's see what happens. You see, completely wrong. So you don't want to trust. You don't want to trust get values automatic. So here I'm changing to minus 168, and here I add 12. But I'm going to keep the 22. Doesn't matter. It's more conservative anyway. The maximum image width 3000 pixels. What happens is that if your image width is greater than that, SPM is going to resize. You don't want SPM to resize anything. So make sure that your image is less than whatever is in that box. So in my case, the image is about 2000 pixels wide, so it's fine. But otherwise, put some very large values so that SPM doesn't resize. You don't want SPM to resize anything. Create left-right depth maps. Well, we only want one. We only want the left one. Even though DMAG5 computes both depth maps, DMAG9B will only improve one depth map. So it's going to be a bit faster. So don't check that if you don't need both depth maps. And here I usually create my depth map so that front is white and back is black. Yeah, so I want that. So I'm going to check that. Okay, so on the left are the DMAG5 settings, and on the right are the DMAG9B settings. So DMAG5, the purpose of DMAG5 is to create the depth map, maybe a rough version of the depth map. And DMAG9B, the purpose of using that is to just improve the depth map, so that the depth map better follows the contours of the objects in your stereo pair. I have videos that explain all those settings. I have a video on DMAG5, and I have a video about DMAG9B that explains all the settings. But for this video, I'm just going to tell you that the most important setting for DMAG5 is probably the radius. The rest you don't really need to worry about it. So here the radius by default is 16. You can go for this image, you probably can go to 32 because it's rather large. Like I would use 16 if my image was 1024 pixels wide. Here it's 2048 pixels wide, so I would probably use 32 for the radius. But let's leave it like that for now. And the only other important thing, in my opinion, is the downsampling factor, which by default is set to 2. To get the best quality, the downsampling factor should be 1. But if you use a downsampling factor of 2, the speed at which the depth map is computed is multiplied by a factor of 4. So I think it's worth putting 2 here instead of 1. But if you really want the best possible depth map, you should probably put 1. Okay, for the DMAG9B setting, I think the most important is probably that one, the sample rates spatial, and maybe the lambda here, which is the smoothing parameter. The rest you should not need to worry about it. But so those are explained, as I said before, in another video. But you can also look at the manual for DMAG9B, which should be in that directory that you created. In my case, it's called DMAG5_9. So here you should have a PDF called DMAG9B_manual.pdf, and it explains all the parameters. So the special sample rate, basically, if you don't want DMAG9B to be too destructive, you may want to decrease that sample rate. So here it's at 32, but you can certainly try 16 or even 8. And for the lambda, which is the smoothing parameter, the lambda here, so lambda, let's see what it is. Okay, so lambda controls the smoothness. Okay, so the lower lambda is, the less smooth the output depth map is going to be. So if you want your depth map not to be changed too much by DMAG9B, you should lower that lambda. Okay, so if you increase lambda, DMAG9B might do too much in terms of trying to improve the depth map quality. So by default is 0.25, but you can try to put lower values like 0.025 instead of 0.25. So let's just create the depth map using the default values and see what happens. So let's click create depth map here. So it's going to take a while, so I'm just going to stop the video here. Okay, so this is the depth map that got generated. What I did is that I clicked on side by side so that I can see the left image and the left depth map, the corresponding depth map. So what's interesting to look at is what the intermediate files are. So if you go to downloads and your DMAG5_9, there's a bunch of files that have been written by SPM, and one that's interesting is the DPS_L and DPS_R, which are the left and right depth maps generated by DMAG5. So let me open those. So this is what DMAG5 outputs, and what you have here is what DMAG9B outputs, using this as input. So usually what I want to have is make sure that the parameters for DMAG5 are optimum. So I would look at this depth map, not the depth map, the final depth map, the one that's produced by DMAG9B, because then you can see exactly what DMAC5 outputs. So to change the DMAC5 parameters, you need to look at what DMAC5 outputs, and this is what DMAC5 outputs. So at this point, I think it would be probably worthwhile to let me see if there are other interesting things. So again, downloads. So this is the input for DMAC5. So it's basically your two images, the left and right images. It has no interest for us. I'm looking for, okay, occlusion map. That's the one we want to look at. So, okay, so this is outputted by DMAC5. Let's have a look at this one. So, what is white means that there is exact correspondence between the left and right depth maps, meaning that the depth computed is very likely to be correct. Anything that's black here means that there's no correspondence between the left and right depth maps produced by DMAC5, which means that what's going to happen is that DMAC5 cannot use the depth it's computed, so it's going to have to interpolate using neighboring values. So what you want is you want those dark areas to be as minimal as possible. You don't want in those occlusion maps to see too much black. You want to be mostly white. So here, okay, let me see. I'm gonna do something. Hold on, let me get back. Okay, so what I did is that I fired up GIMP, and I'm gonna load up. So here I'm in DMAC5.9 directory, and I'm gonna load up the left depth map produced by DMAC5, and I'm also gonna load up, open as layers. I'm gonna load up the occlusion map, which is this one, the left one. Okay, so now, okay, so I have those two as layers, and now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to change, I'm going to go back to SPM, and yes, SPM, I'm going to do undo to get back to the stereo pair. Okay, so now I'm back, and I'm going to change. So let's depth map. Don't create depth map from stereo pair. Okay, so I'm back. Okay, so yeah, if to make sure that the default set, you have the default setting, you can just press on this. Okay, in case you start fiddling around with the parameters. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to change the radius here. I'm going to double it to 32, leaving everything else the same. And I'm going to rerun. So, okay, nothing else has changed. I'm going to rerun that one, and then I'm going to compare with the one that I just did with 16. But we are just going to compare the DMAC5 output. Okay, so let's create the depth map. So let me get out, and I'll come back when it's done. It doesn't take long. It takes probably 30 seconds. Okay, so it's just finished. So that's my new depth map. So let's load let's go back into GIMP, and let's load the new occlusion map. So let's load this one, the new one. What's the new one? So this is the new one. This is the old one. New one, old one. Actually, I think the old one was better, I think. And now let's compare the depth map. So depth map is this one. Okay, so this is the new one. This is the old one. New one, old one, new one, old one, new one, old one. Maybe the new one is better. So I think it's probably a better depth map at this point. So let's just say that with 32 you get a better depth map. But I think there's something wrong with the. I think I'm going to change the. I think the background is probably a little bit further down. So let me change that. So let's do undo, do depth map, create depth map from stereo pair. So let's go back to default settings. So I'm gonna put 32, but I'm gonna change the background. I think it's a bit further down. I think, let me just. Minus 168. Yeah, I think let's put minus 180. Okay, so minus 180, and then we're gonna redo a depth map. And I think, okay, so that's good. Okay, I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, I'm back. So yeah, it looks much better. So let's go into GIMP, and here I only got rid of the older ones, the one from radius 16. So here this is the radius 32 depth map and occlusion map. So let's load the new occlusion map. So open as layer. This is the occlusion map. Here it is. So this is the new occlusion map, and this is the old one. So clearly, just because we had the minimum disparity wrong, that created all that mess before. Just by changing the minimum disparity, we are getting a much better depth map. So let's load up the new depth map just to confirm. So open as layer, and it's going to be DPSL, that one. So this is the new DMAC5 depth map. This is the old. Okay, so clearly much better. So that's excellent. So let's go back. So let me think about what I'm going to do next. Okay, so now let's undo, so we can do another. Okay, let's go into GIMP and save. So let's get rid of all this stuff here, and let's load up the depth map produced by DMAG9B. It's called out.tif. Okay, this one. So this is the same as what was here before. That's the final depth map. So let's save that one so that we can compare with when we change the parameters for the Mag9B. Okay. So let's go back to SPM. So let's go depth map, create depth map from StereoPhoto. I don't think we're going to be able to improve much by changing the. So now we know that the DMAG5 settings are pretty optimum. You could try 64 here for the radius if you want, and maybe try down sampling factor equal to 1. But so now let's assume that those settings are optimum, and let's just focus on the DMAG9B stuff. So the things that I would change, but I don't think it's going to have much of an impact, because I think this one is already optimum, the 32. If you don't see like blocks in your depth map, you really don't really need to lower the sample rate spatial. But I mean, we can try to go to 16, but I don't think it's going to have any influence here. If you clearly see blocks in your depth map, you may want to reduce the sample rate spatial. In this case, we don't see them, so you don't really need to do that, but let's do it anyway. And let's keep everything else the same. So let's create the depth map. And let me get out of here, and I'll come back when it's done. Okay, I'm back. So let's go back into GIMP. So here, this is the output depth map using 32 for the sample spatial parameter. So this is the old depth map. So I was talking about the blocks. We can see them here. Let me just zoom a bit. You can see blocks here. I mean, yeah, it's not too bad. So, but by reducing the sample rate spatial, you're going to pretty much get rid of the blocks, or they're going to be much smaller and less noticeable. But here they are not even noticeable, to be honest. So let's put 50%. Okay, so let's look at the new one, the new depth map, which is called out. So this is the new one. This is the old one. New one, old one, new one, old one. I think it's a bit better. It's a bit better, I think. You see how the blocks kind of disappear. So that's good. So I think this is pretty much the best you're going to be able to do here. So let's go back to again, let's go back and see those parameters. So I think you can try 8, but I think 16 is probably optimum here. You can also change lambda. I don't think it's going to be it's going to make much of a difference, but you can play with that if you want. And the rest, I don't think you need to touch any of that stuff. You really don't need to touch that. I mean, we can try 8 just for fun. let's do that. Okay, it's done. So let's go back into GIMP, and let's load up the new def map. So open as a layer, and it's going to be again out.tiff. So this is the new one. This is the old one. New one, old one. New one, old one. I think the old one is better. So okay, so I think we've found pretty much the optimum parameters for the Mag9B. So let's go back. Let's undo and look at our parameters. So yeah, so 16 is better, and the lambda you can also try if you want to change it, but I think it's fine as is. It is very important to have the correct minimum and maximum disparities here, and don't trust this one. Don't trust automatic. Do it manually. And also don't let SPM resize your images. Make sure that the width of your image is less than what's in there. If you're not completely sure about the, let's say, the background value, what you can do is that you put the value, you do the left right arrows thing, you get a value, and if you're not sure, you lower it a little bit. So like here, instead of putting, I think it was minus 176, I put something lower. So I put minus 180. Same thing for the foreground. When you do your left right arrows and match the foreground point, if you're not completely sure, so I think I had a point at 12, since I was not completely, or I think I got the values from automatic. So 12 was probably not conservative enough. So to be more conservative, you just increase that value. So instead of 12, you put 22, you put 30. It doesn't really matter. But it's better to be conservative than having the wrong values. So it's better to be conservative. So that's extremely important. So for to get good depth maps, you need to have the correct background and foreground values in SPM. And you also need to have a properly rectified stereo pair, what SPM calls adjusted. Those are the two key elements to get good depth maps. Of course, because if the background and foreground values are wrong, you will never be able to get a good depth map, no matter how much you tweak the parameters for the Mag5 and the Mag9B. So this is extremely important. And do not trust get values automatic, because you'll always get bad depth maps. Do it the old-fashioned way, manually, using the left and right arrow keys. So that's pretty much it. I mean, you don't have to fiddle too much with the parameters. I mean, it took me maybe 2 or 3 tries to get the depth map I want. So that's not too much work, I think. So let me just recreate the depth map with the proper parameters, and then we'll see how to save the depth map for to make a Facebook 3D photo. So let me start, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. So let's see now how to save the depth map. So I think it's under Edit, Depth Map. Yeah, this one. Save as Facebook 3D photo 2D plus depth. Save as JPEG. I think it doesn't matter. You can save as JPEG, PNG. Oh, it's only JPEG. Oops. Display depth map front side. I think you have to switch here. You leave it like this if the front is black, but here in our case it's not that, so you have to switch it here to white. Okay, so let's save. Let's check it. So this is the image. Oh, I see. Okay, so that's the image. Okay, so that's correct. And this is the depth. Okay, so white is front. That's correct. Okay, so that's it. So then all you have to do is go into Facebook and you just input into your post those two, this one and that one, and that's going to get you a Facebook 3D photo. So a good way to check the quality of your depth map is to go into depthlayer.hugocapital.com, and you load the reference image and you load the depth map, click create model, render mode. I use point cloud, and you just play around. Make sure the depth looks correct. So it looks pretty good to me. I mean, it looks pretty good for if you just want to put it on Facebook 3D. I mean, that's totally fine. But here you can really check to make sure. I mean, if you're really a perfectionist, you may want to fix this here. So for that, you can go into SPM and edit the depth map, or you can use a software I made called the 3D Converter 2. And there's a video that explains how to edit a depth map using the 3D Converter 2. But okay, so I think that's pretty good. Okay, so that concludes my video. So please make sure the stereo pair is aligned, adjusted, and always use the better precision, what he calls the slow method when adjusting. And also make sure that the minimum and maximum disparities are correct. I mean, they don't have to be correct, but you need to make sure they are conservative. They don't have to be correct, but they need to be conservative, on the conservative side. So if you're not sure about the background value, lower it a little bit. If you're not sure about the foreground value, increase it a little bit. Okay, so and what he calls background, I call minimum disparity, and what he calls foreground, I call maximum disparity. So if you're not sure for your minimum disparity, lower it a little bit. If you're not sure about your maximum disparity, increase it a little bit. If the background and foreground values are wrong, no matter what you do, the depth maps are going to look like crap. You'll never be able to get good depth maps. So it's very important that the background and foreground values are correct, or at least, if not correct, that they are on the conservative side. Okay, so I hope I got this point across, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.